Hello everyone, welcome to Joy with us. I am Mollie, the host of today's forum. December 10th is the International Human Rights Day. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said for Human Rights Days, our world is at crossroads, so it is very important to expand human rights, freedom, and to rebuild trust. How to create a peaceful and equal planet. Let's think about it. Next, I want to share with you a speech of Dr. Hong Daozi, the Vice President of AWC.
Distinguished guests, dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, good day. The UN General Assembly adopted the Universal Declaration of Human Rights on December 10, 1948, and 2 years later declared December 10th the Human Rights Day. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights is based upon human liberty and equality, and the first document in history that details 30 fundamental human rights. It is also the most widely translated document, available in more than 500 languages. Human rights is a universal value that has been recognized as the foundation of freedom, justice, peace, and security, as well as of the sustainable development of human society. Inspired by the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the United Nations adopted the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights and the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights in 1966. To further clarify and act upon the spirit of human rights, the two covenants and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights combined into the International Bill of Human Rights, the most important human rights bill in the world, and the very foundation of international human rights law. On this important day, we are once again reminded that every human being is endowed with fundamental human rights. No person or public power should infringe or deprive others of their basic human rights. These rights should be respected, protected, and jointly defended. American human rights activist Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. has once said, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." Mr. Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of the United Nations, said human rights violations harm us all. Only when human rights are recognized and honored will peace be achieved. Respect for human rights is the common linkage between democratic nations. However, fundamental human rights are violated in many parts of the world. Human rights defenders, following the calling of conscience, are taking to the street and demanding that public authorities respect and protect citizens' civil, political, economic, social, and cultural rights. The calling of human rights is heard. Everyone is urged to take immediate action for the future of their country. Human rights are at the core of 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Sustainable development cannot be achieved without human dignity. We have to create equal opportunities in order to achieve sustainable goals. We are determined to take actions to protect human rights and remain united as we recover from the pandemic and go beyond into a brighter future. The United Nations is calling on world citizens to stand up for human rights and put human rights in the center of the post-pandemic world, urging social reforms to create an international community built upon freedom and fearlessness with more inclusiveness, resilience, and equality. The world is now full of uncertainties and challenges. Global problems such as war, environmental changes, extreme climate patterns, excessive exploitations of resources, and unequal distribution have provoked the COVID-19 pandemic and Mother Nature to fight back, causing unpredictable and devastating disasters for mankind. In the chaos, human rights are under immediate threat from special interests and corrupt government bureaucracy. The chaos stems from the same root. Michelle Bachelet, UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, said there is a vaccine to hunger, poverty, inequality, and possibly, if it is taken seriously, to climate change, as well as to many of other ills that face humanity. The name of that vaccine is human rights. We should properly apply the human rights vaccine to help us build more resilient, prosperous, and inclusive societies. Our common humanity is rooted in human rights, equality, justice, and freedom. These core values need to be reiterated, heard, put into practice. Then the human society will be able to avoid violence and achieve stability and peace. Under the doctrine of cause and effect, just like the rule of heaven and earth, wrongdoers will eventually bear the consequence. To find solutions, it is necessary to go back to the root cause of the problem and change the root cause. Heart is the root cause of our problems. Selfishness causes people to forget the respect between people. True human rights attainment requires basic respect among people. There will be no peace, equality, democracy, and fraternity with no human rights. Human rights comes from conscience. Conscience is the origin of all virtues. Compassion is the footing of morality. Human rights is based upon conscience and love. Humanity is connected with compassion. French philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau said a principle of justice and virtue exists in the depth of soul. This is conscience. In recognition that conscience is the key to change the world, the UN General Assembly declared April 5th the International Day of Conscience in 2019. In recognition that love and peace is the most important foundation for sustainable development and mankind's common well-beings. The Federation of World Peace and Love promoted the declaration of International Day of Conscience to urge people to seek win-win solutions with peace and harmony in order to solve national and international crises. All world citizens are encouraged to nurture love in their hearts, to strike a balance in the pursuit of economic, social, cultural, spiritual, technological, and educational development. Conscience is the most needed universal vaccine. On Human Rights Day, we look forward to working with states, organizations, and world citizens to protect, promote, and practice human rights as we meet challenges with creative and effective solutions. On the path to securing universal human rights, we need to have faith, merit, strength, and courage to overcome obstacles as we work hand in hand with like-minded, and to continue the work of securing a human rights-friendly environment. We need to focus on the collective well-being inherent to our conscience. Let's create sustainability and a united world with human rights, dignity, peace, equality, freedom, stability, and happiness. When we all have peace and health, may the world have prosperity and harmony.
This year, the theme of UN International Human Rights Day is All Human, All Equal. It is to return to the most basic idea of human rights, the equality. The world has paid attention to all kinds of unfair things and human rights abuse. In Taiwan, Tai Chi Man case is a human rights abuse by the government for 25 years. People from home and abroad show their support. Let's see what they have to say.
During these years, we have been able to appreciate the international importance of the UN and what can be achieved with the UN bodies in the defense of human rights. Over the past 4 years at the UN, with the help of the organization present here at this conference today, we have repeatedly denounced the discrimination against minorities around the world. We have brought to the attention of the UN the discrimination of religious minorities in China, such as those suffered by the Uyghurs, the member of Falun Gong, and more particularly the dramatic case of the member of the Church of the Almighty God. Session after session of the Human Rights Council, we organized conferences, made written and oral statements, we held meetings with the state delegation, during which the victims were able to make their voice heard. In June 2021, we brought to attention to the UN Human Rights Council the case of the Tai Chi Man and the injustice they suffer in Taiwan. At this Human Rights Council, we denounced how the tax weapon was used to harm Tai Chi Man. In this statement, we highlighted and denounced the unscrupulous means used by the Taiwanese government in its attempt to destroy the Tai Chi Man movement. The use of tax weapons against spiritual minorities is unfortunately common practices in many countries, including France, which finally, after a struggle to denounce this injustice practice, was condemned by the European Court of Human Rights. In September, at the 88th Human Rights Council session, we renewed our appeal for Tai Chi Man. This time, we highlighted the confiscation of this Tai Chi Man place of worship by the Taiwanese government. This is another form of discrimination, just as serious, because the spiritual community cannot exist without a place of worship. Today, the situation of the Tai Chi Man can no longer be ignored in the world, and the Taiwanese government must allow the Tai Chi Man to enjoy their property, their place of worship, and to make their contribution to world peace without worry. The UN mechanisms allow civil society to participate in the improvement of our society, and it is important to continue to speak out against the unfair treatment of Tai Chi Man by the Taiwanese government. In 2009, Taiwan ratified the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, ICCPR, and the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights. The ICCPR guarantees fundamental rights for every citizen, as well as freedom of religion or belief. The signing of the International Covenant is of paramount importance, but there is still a step to be taken to implement and respect the commitments made when the covenant was ratified. The model proposed by the United Nations is a balance between these institutions, the member state, and civil society. In these three components that ensure that the fundamental purposes established in 1945 by the Charter remain at the heart of the United Nations. Taiwan, like all other states, must find this balance with civil society and grow with it, not against it. It is in fact the struggle of the Tai Chi Man that we support so that justice is done to them, so that their contribution to a better, peaceful, and harmonious Taiwanese society is recognized. Thank you for your attention.
Next, we have invited three speakers to talk about the truth and the lies in the Tai Chi Man case. Let's welcome the first speaker, Jimmy, who is the leader of Tai Chi Man.
Hello everyone, I'm Jimmy, an office worker. Today, I'm going to talk about the origin of UN's Human Rights Day and a human rights indicator case in Taiwan. December 10th is World Human Rights Day. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights, UDHR, is a milestone document in the history of human rights, drafted by representatives with different legal and cultural backgrounds from all regions of the world. The declaration was proclaimed by the UN General Assembly in Paris on December 10, 1948. It was the first time in history that basic human rights should be universally protected. Today, human rights have become a universal value and an important indicator whether a country is free and democratic. Adopted by UN General Assembly in 1966, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights and the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights entered into force in 1976. The two covenants become the most important international human rights code. Together with the UDHR, the covenants comprise the International Bill of Human Rights. In Taiwan, the government has adopted the two covenants in 2009, but are the human rights really implemented in Taiwan? Whether the violation of human rights has disappeared? In fact, there are still many unsolved cases involving human rights violation in Taiwan. One of them, which has received the most international attention, is the Tai Chi Man case. After 25 years, it still remains unresolved. There are many violations of human rights in the Tai Chi Man case. In the beginning, the prosecutor used inappropriate methods to prosecute the innocent people. The control yuan has outlined 8 major violations of law about the prosecutor dealing with the Tai Chi Man case. Although Supreme Court ruled Tai Chi Man not guilty of fraud, no tax evasion, or violation of the Tax Collection Code, the National Tax Bureau (NTB) disregarded the Supreme Court's decision and continued to issue the unjustified tax bills and transfer the case to the Administrative Enforcement Agency for enforcement. Yet, the agency still ignored the truth that the tax bill is illegal and has many mistakes. Finally, it illegally forcefully auctioned off the sacred land belonging to Tai Chi Man, made it into national ownership on August 21, 2020. I joined Tai Chi Man in 2009. Through practicing Qigong, I became healthier. Before practicing Qigong, I had the problem of low back pain due to sitting long time at work. I also have dry eye problem because working before computer for a long time every day. After practicing Qigong for a while, these annoying symptoms improved a lot. In addition to physical improvement in my body, my Shifu gave us many opportunities to share on stage. I was not good at speaking before, but because I had the opportunity to share my experience learned in Tai Chi Man several times, it was no longer hard for me to share to the public. I was even recognized by my boss aforementioned. I also saw that many of the brothers and sisters in Tai Chi Man become happier and more energetic after practicing Qigong. So I knew that in 1996, Tai Chi Man has suffered the unjust human rights persecution by the government. I just can't believe it. Why such a good and kind organization could be so persecuted. In 2012, when Taiwan submitted its first international report on national human rights, then President Ma Ying-jeou was also attended. When asked by reporters how to solve the Tai Chi Man case, which has attracted international attention. President Ma replied, "The government is one of the entities most likely to violate human rights. A case lasted for more than 20 years really makes all feel helpless. The situation must be ended. We are still working on many parts that can protect human rights. Without a doubt, we are still not doing enough. So, we are willing to open mind to let everyone to examine the government to see in which part we are not doing good enough. Let's do it better." I agree with the comments by the President Ma. Everyone should be equal in front of the law. Even the government officials must abide by the law and follow the court's judgment, which is the base of a democratic country. The government must not leave the people at a loss. So today, I want to take this opportunity to call on the government to be brave enough to admit its mistakes in the past, to revoke the illegal tax bills, and to return the illegally nationalized land to Tai Chi Man, to restore the reputation of Tai Chi Man, and investigate all the related government officials for their illegal misconduct of duty. Please let Taiwan become a country with the rule of law, democracy, and human rights. This is my sharing today. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jimmy, for your sharing. Next, let's welcome BIBO. She will share with us the Tai Chi Man case. Please welcome BIBO.
Do you know that one of the most incredible human rights cases of the century, the Tai Chi Man tax case, just occurred in Taiwan? If you haven't heard of it, please listen to me. As the Tai Chi Man tax case involved too many people's interest. From the case, we could not only understand how people are deprived of human rights, but also how they become the government's cash machine. First of all, make the fact real. On July 13, 2007, the criminal court ruled that Tai Chi Man was not guilty. No fraud, no tax evasion, and the violation of the tax collection law. And all innocent defendants received compensation from the country, showing that the entire case was invalid from the very beginning. Among them, the indictment used by the prosecutor Ho Kwan-ren to prosecute Tai Chi Man was thrown out by the criminal court and was not valid at all. However, until now, the National Tax Bureau (NTB) still issued the illegal tax bills on Tai Chi Man with the false indictment. Can fake ones be made to real just for the sake of earning performance and receiving bonuses? Secondly, bureaucrats shield one another. According to the two international human rights conventions, the government is obliged to provide the effective remedies. Administrative litigation is the last defense line for the civils to seek help. In 2005, the trial judge Xu Feng only notified the NTB private to provide supporting materials and did not give Tai Chi Man any opportunity to make a statement in the court. The supporting materials that NTB provided was the false indictment. Therefore, the judge made a ridiculously divided factual judgment, revoking the years 1991, 1993, 1994, and the 1995 tax penalties, except for the 1992 tax year. Bureaucrats shield one another. To whom can the people complain about their sufferings? The third step is to call deer a horse. Tai Chi Man is an ancient Qigong and martial arts culture group. Tai Chi Man has never changed in nature since its establishment in 1966. However, the NTB illegally issued the unjustified tax bills for 6 years, from 1991 to 1996, by accusing Tai Chi Man as a crime school. How come all the other years were martial arts groups, but only 6 years become crime school? By the end of 2019, the NTB finally corrected 5 of the 6 years of taxation amount to 0 and still left 1 year 1992 unchanged. If they are all of the same nature and the evidence of the same facts, why is the tax penalty for 1 year not revoked? What kind of mindset do our NTB officials and the administrative court judge have that they repeatedly violated their conscience by calling a deer a horse and giving such wrongful rulings? I find the answer in August last year. The Tai Chi Man practice site was illegally auctioned off and nationalized by the NTB and the Administrative Enforcement Agency. If a fake case allows several government departments to receive huge bonuses, such as bonuses for handling cases, tax incentives, enforcement bonuses, etc. These illegal officials who involved in this case will stick to it and call each other for their own benefit. Basically, Tai Chi Man case is one of the fake cases that the government derives in order to find an ATM. I don't know how you feel after hearing the Tai Chi Man case, but I personally find it is quite frightening. This whole case tells me that the Taiwan National Tax Bureau has huge administrative discretion power. They can arbitrarily distort the nature of the income, and then with estimated amount without any calculating basis, they can issue any tax bill and ask you to pay for it. If you do not pay, the Administrative Enforcement Agency can auction your assets and restrict you from leaving the country. You may think that Taiwan is a democratic country and with many ways to fight for your rights. For example, you can appeal and litigate. Please wake up. To do the appeal, you have to pay half of the amount first. Otherwise, you will be subject to enforcement of freezing assets, seizing forensic auctions, or even under jail. Even if you win the administrative litigation, the punishment would only be sent back to the original unit and ask for another legal punishment. The illegal tax bill will not die for 10,000 years. That's how it tortures countless tax victims. Can such a Taiwan really attract foreign investment and retain talent with these terrible processes? The Tai Chi Man case seems to have nothing to do with you, but it implies that the potential problems in Taiwan and the difficulties that will be faced in the future. It is closely related to you and me. The more we care, the more pressure our government will have. Taiwan will have a chance to make progress. Thank you.
Thank you for BIBO sharing. The next speaker is Coco. She hopes that the official can correct the mistake, realize the human right protection. Then people can enjoy the human right. Let's welcome Coco.
Hello, everybody. Good day. Each individual is gifted with natural rights, with no exceptions or distinctions. The ability to express oneself freely without being enslaved or tortured is a necessity in life, as is the concept of human rights. As I read the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights, I saw a tall, hard wall of government restricting the expansion of freedom and smothering the blossoming of human rights. Take a look at Taiwan, the so-called beacon of freedom in Asia, where human rights violations are still taking place in different forms. And one of the most significant forms of violation is fiscal persecution. In Taiwan, the Tai Chi Man tax case, the largest fraud case in over a quarter century, remains unsolved. The court has claimed the people's name, and the executive yuan has held an interministerial meeting to resolve this grievance. But the Ministry of Finance and the Bureau of National Taxation have blatantly breached their promise by not only failing to withdraw the unlawful tax bill, but also continuing to transfer it to the enforcement agency. They joined hands to illegally auction off the sacred land of Tai Chi Man, which was subsequently illegally surrendered to the state, bullying the court's ruling and damaging the government's credibility. Whenever taxation is involved, it is usually a byproduct of the violation of human rights by public authority. But it is also the dead end where people are the most powerless and have the least reciprocal right to vindicate themselves. The long-standing and old-school fiscal persecution formula points to a country's unbalanced fiscal mechanism, inefficiency, and corruption. And ultimately, the cost of government inaction was passed on to the people. Apparently, this kind of overly illegal behavior continues to be tacitly approved by the government as the backer of the persecution. The Taiwanese government covers its real purpose and illegal behavior of coveting bonuses and performance with a seemingly logical and legitimate taxation, in order to confuse people and readily wield public power to conceal the reality. Otherwise, whether government officials deliberately overlook the new facts that benefit the people. In the Tai Chi Man Force case, the recognition of ritual to Shifu without a quid pro quo relationship has been interpreted in a biased manner, which is a serious misunderstanding for the deeds and an insult to government officials who have little knowledge and no desire to learn more. We expect the government agencies have a comprehensive awareness of the broad facts as part of their obligations, professionalism, and ethics, and that every aspect of execution be careful and rational and closely linked to the evidence. The government, on the contrary, has violated international human rights conventions by abstracting due process and using taxation to stifle civil society organizations. Due to a lack of a redress mechanism, authorities have been enamored of limitless tax incentives. To gain bonus, they would do anything, including distorting judicial decisions and even disregarding due process. They prioritize the interest of the few above all justice, which is nothing less than repeatedly pouring the nation's resources into a bottomless black hole, where government officials have taken away and expended a great deal of public resources that could and should have been used to achieve better goals and the common good of society. Government officials who lack the ability of free evaluation of evidence and judgment in accordance with the reasonableness of the evidence are unable to assume the authority and responsibility delegated by the state. How can we afford to have such a poor squad who corrupts the country? Without such inept team members, Taiwan would be a very different place today. The term tax dictatorship refers to the breakdown of the judicial system, which leads to the enslavement of the people to taxes. That is, the restriction of human rights and freedoms. The fiscal justice is a necessity because people want a more stable system to rely upon. With a bureaucratic control mentality that does not allow dissent, how many other cases of persecution like this are still happening? Like the tip of an iceberg, they are rarely seen or heard in public. The Tai Chi Man forced case has brought concerns of justice, freedom, and human rights to the fore. If we want our country to prosper, we must confront and ensure that the injustices underneath the iceberg are fully reviewed and resolved. Consider what makes Taiwan. Why Taiwan is eligible for the title of Asia's Beacon of Freedom. Taiwan is unique, that it maintains a generally consistent image of freedom and reliability that has attracted international attention, allowing for a range of voices and views. Domestic and international ties must be built on a solid basis of trust and respect for human rights. And Taiwan's hard-won democracy can only be strengthened by real democracy and the rule of law. A corrupted one in which the people are subject to a high degree of manipulation will substantially weaken the country's legitimacy. The people have a moral obligation to raise objections to inappropriate decisions, and the government likewise should have the fortitude to assume examination of any administrative flaws and not be fixated on one-way operation. Here, I urge the government to be honest about correcting the deficiencies and initiate a two-way, open, effective, and constructive dialogue with the people. To make human rights a reality, to be closer to the core spirit of the UN Declaration in terms of content, and to create a more visible added value for Taiwan. We do have a choice. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you, Coco, for your sharing. I believe we have equal rights when we were born on Earth. No matter who we are, who we love, where we live, we have the same chance to live and dream. The world has become unfair, but we can change it. Let's work together to fight for human rights. We believe we can do it. Thank you for your attention. See you next time. Bye-bye.